Okay, so this is Violence in the Name of Faith, Religious Terrorism. This is the second part of Chapter 6. So as we talked about in the previous chapter, we have states that sponsor religious terrorism and there are dissidents. And first we'll look at the state sponsors and the Revolutionary Guard, Jerusalem Force, since Islamic Revolution of 1979, the government of Iran has sponsored terrorist groups and attacks throughout the world. I mean, but mostly in the Middle East. But they've had attacks um, in different parts of the world that have been attributed to groups that have been sponsored by the Iranian government. Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamists are supported by Iran, so that the um, terrorist group Hezbollah is partly funded, and is armed by Iran. And the members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard have been training them in the Bekaa Valley for years. So Hezbollah is not just a terrorist organization; it's also a political party with representative in the Lebanese legislature, and um, its aim is to transform Lebanon into a Shia Islamic republic like Iran. So Iran has trained Hezbollah, but they also have supported and funded Hamas, which is another group in the Middle East that has been waging a war against Israel. Um, and in supporting these groups, Iran, its attempt is to liberate Jerusalem from the Jews. So again, we've come to that overriding theme about these Middle Eastern groups and these Islamist extremists and their hatred for the state of Israel. And that's usually the underlying factor or the overriding factor, which causes them to commit these terrible terroristic acts. Some of the other examples of state-sponsored religious terrorism are Pakistan and India. There's a Hindu-Muslim conflict going on, and since British control was abated in the Indian subcontinent, the Hindus and Muslims have fought bitterly. When the British were there, they kept the fighting under control. When the British forces left India, this fighting was exasperated. The former colony was partitioned into India, West Pakistan, and East Pakistan, but that did not stop the violence. They tried to split it up. So there's been sectarian violence, which is again is religious violence within India, because of India's support for Bangladeshi independence. The Pakistanis are bitter enemies against India because of their support for Bangladeshi independence. And again, and to cap it all off, the governments of India and Pakistan, which hate each other, both possess nuclear weapons, which makes that conflict even more scary. So a notable war that's occurring between Pakistan and India is in Kashmir, and the fight for that territory. Um, these areas are 70% Muslim, but the areas are under Indian control. And with a group, Lashkar-e-Taiba is one that has become a terrorist group that has become very active in the area, and they're notable because of they're responsible for the attacks on Mumbai, which is one of the most studied terrorist attacks in the last 10 or 15 years, besides September 11th. It was um, an attack that involved active shooters, bombs, and several folks that well documented and well planned attack, which occurred in Mumbai in November of 2008. Again, I urge you to read about that incident because, again, there's a lot of material out there about it. There's actually HBO documentaries, there's several documentaries about it, and it's a very interesting terrorist event that occurred at that time. So we'll finish up chapter 6, the second part, with another example that he gives, the Golden Temple Massacre, which occurred in 1984, and the Sikhs were seeking independence, an independent state from um, the Indian majority, and it was a massacre that occurred in the temple, and the campaign that followed was violent, and it included the assassination of Indira Gandhi, who was the prime minister of India at the time. So, um, again, that's on page 146. I urge you to read it and continue reading along as we do these chapters. It'll help you in the tests, and it'll help you understand better some of the things that we're talking about as we go along. So I will move on to the third part, which is dissident terrorists, religious dissident terrorists.